After some of Abraham's descendants, the Israelites, became slaves in Egypt, God called Moses to lead them out of Egypt and into Canaan, the land God earlier promised to Abraham. So really there's a lot of things that have happened since the last lesson with Abraham and the offering of Isaac. But basically Abraham had a son Isaac. Isaac had Jacob, who was renamed to Israel. Israel had 12 sons, and they're the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of those sons, Joseph, wasn't liked too much by his brothers because he was his father's favorite. They ended up selling him into slavery to Egyptians. So he went to Egypt in slavery, but he ends up through a series of circumstances becoming Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt. He became Pharaoh's right-hand man. And during a famine, all the sons of Israel went to Egypt because it was the only place with food because of Joseph's power and a plan to still have food during the famine. And so they came to Joseph, and they were reunited and ended up moving out to Egypt. And now at this time, they grew. Verse 7 of Exodus chapter 1 says, "But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them." So we had a bunch of children of Israel called Israelites in the land of Egypt, and a Pharaoh comes along that didn't know who Joseph was. He didn't remember about him. All he knew was he had all these Israelites. So he put them into slavery, and they were growing so much, so he made laws against them having kids, and he was trying to control them. This is where comes in where Moses, who had grown up in the palace, actually in Egypt, had gone away for 40 years, was a shepherd in the wilderness. He's walking around one day, and he sees a bush that's burning but is not consumed. So he thinks, what is this bush? So he comes to the bush, and God speaks to Moses from the bush. And that's in Exodus chapter 3. And God basically says, the promise that I gave Abraham, your forefather, and also to Israel, to bring you into Canaan, a great land. I'm wanting to fulfill that promise, and I want to use you to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. And Moses was a little shocked that he wanted to use him, and he gave all these excuses. But then God said, tell them that I am have sent me to you. Because Moses was like, who do I tell him sent me? God or whatever? And God says in verse 14, "And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you." Now, I am is the name of God. It means basically that God just is. He always was, he always is, and he always will be in the future. He's the great I am. And Moses was to tell the people of Israel that. Verse 15 says, "Moreover God said to Moses, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations." So God was telling Moses, hey, I'm the same God that was there for Abraham, that gave him these promises of the promised land and to bless his descendants, and I'm the same God of Jacob or Israel that provided for the Israelites in sending Joseph to Egypt, and the Israelites knew of this God. Surely their parents had told them of God, Jehovah Jireh, their provider. The word Lord here in this verse is all capitals, meaning that it's Jehovah or Yahweh, which is basically what we talked about earlier. I am, the all-existent one. And we see from these passages that God is an eternal being. He always was, always is, always will be. He's the loving Father, the Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And also he's the faithful promise keeper. He is going to keep his promise of bringing the Israelites into the promised land.